Let's talk about the schedule just a little bit. We mentioned it earlier, but Clemson to start the year feels like, I mean, there are a lot of really fun games in week one, and no one's season will be over after week one. At least I hope not. That how I said that last year, it happened to me. But but we played a week zero. We played a week zero. So even
Right.
if we lose to Bama, but our season was over. We were only 0-2 team after week one, so that was fun. But Clemson to start the year is just huge, and for both teams, Dabo's in a little bit of the same spot right now. They continue to go 9-3. Now they snuck into the playoffs because the ACC sucks, but weren't super competitive there. Had a little bit of a comeback against Texas, but Dabo's in a similar spot to Brian Kelly. Dabo has the past success, and so I don't think his seat is hot or anything like that. But
Right.
they both need to win that game. And
Yes.
I can repeat all the stats about openers and things like that for LSU, but they are in this one going on the road, and they are playing a team that I do think has a ton of talent and also has made changes on the defensive side of the ball. And we're not previewing the Clemson game this early, but man, I don't know. I don't really know how to pick a team in this game. I'll tell you, if the game was tomorrow, I'd probably just go with Clemson because it's at home.
I don't disagree with you.
If the game was in the other Death Valley in Baton Rouge, I'd probably go with LSU. I don't know how to pick it this early. I really like Cade. I think he's an underrated quarterback.
Oh,
I think
yes.
they've got some freaks at wide receiver too. Young kid
Dabo really hit on that. Dabo hit on that freshman wide receiver room now.
It's huge. And so, but that's a huge one. And then not only that, and I like LSU in this one. So I guess if you split here, then things are still pretty wide open. But you have UF earlier than I can remember it, like super early in September. And so you start out the year. I think we're going to find out a lot. F around and find out. We're going to find out a lot about LSU if they come out of September 4-0. If they go 2-0 in those two matchups, we're going to know a ton about what this LSU team is.
Without a doubt. And let's talk about that, about Clemson. You bring in Tom Allen as your DC. Cade Klubnik had 40 touchdowns, bud. Like, I mean, like, I don't care if you're doing that against the school of the blind and deaf. I mean, like, I don't care if you're doing that against Air, really. I mean, Cade Klubnik was a massive reason that you're right that Texas game really got interesting there late. Now, Texas just played around with their food a little too much. Oh, well, actually, they did that every single week.
Yeah.
But the thing that I am interested about in that game and LSU going up there, number one, you got to get this monkey off your back. And TJ, I made this promise to the people that watch my show. I'm going to make it here to anybody that will listen. I ain't picking LSU to win a week one game
until I see it. Yeah,
you got to go out there and prove it, man. Now the interesting thing is you bring two coordinators in from the ACC who know more about Clemson than you do right now, right? Mm-hmm. How much of an advantage is that? But you got to go on the road in a hostile environment. Finally, a game's not on a Sunday, for crying out loud. Thank you, Jesus. We can actually be normal people, and I can just watch a game on a Sunday, and I'm not working my ass off for 4 straight days. But that in and of itself, you got to go out there and you have to prove it. Now, the thing that I'm most interested about, I know that Tom Allen comes in, and I know that schematically things are different, and I think both teams can feel their way out early. Before the kneel downs, Texas had 311 rushing yards. You want to talk about that front seven? I know that Brown, the linebacker's back. I know that you're bringing back some very talented defensive linemen, and LSU's got some question marks on their offensive line. Texas had lost 3 starters and a team that could not run the football. TJ, they're one of the worst teams in the SEC at running the football. Literally. And my God, they lined up and whipped that ass. That is why I am saying you got to get back a little bit to that old school of football. Now, LSU brings in Braylon Moore, ACC, played Clemson, offensive lineman of the week at center. You bring in Josh Thompson from the Big Ten, first team All Big Ten. You got to be able to find ways to run the football, and I think Clemson's got to show that they can defend the run. What are the games that Clemson lost? What did they all have in common? Georgia could not run the football. Texas could not run the football. What was it? Louisville, at moments and times, could not run the football. You know what they all did against Clemson? No. They ran the football. So, South Carolina. Okay, they all ran the football. I mean, Lenora Sellers, for crying out, for crying out loud. I mean, he broke 97 tackles. It's an NCAA record, right? Like, I
One
mean,
drive.
on one play, he broke 97 tackles. So that in and of itself has got to show you can't be the SEC team that loses to Clemson when they went 0-3 against the SEC a year ago. Now, I'm going to throw this out there. I think Cade Klubnik's one of the best quarterbacks in college football, regardless if anybody wants to say about Dabo, Portal, whatever. I don't give two Rudy Poos. The throws that he made against that secondary are elite. They're not good. They're elite. So it's interesting to see what LSU can do there in scheduling. You brought up Florida. Here's a hot take.
Don't do it.
Bro, you look at Florida now offensively. Defensively, they got a lot of questions. Shit. Brother, they got dudes now. Yeah. They got weapons now. Whoo-wee. Look, I'm not saying that Florida is a tough out for anybody. I don't give two Rudy Poos what their record is. Offensively, you talk about that September stretch. Man, you better have figured some things out at DB. That's all I'm going to tell you. Because what they brought in, they bring in Dallas Wilson, the freshman that I think that can play early. You bring back majority of your really good wide receivers. You bring back your quarterback. Your entire interior offensive line returns. Ball, the electric running back returns. TJ, I'm just going to be honest with you now. The way that Florida ended the regular season, beating ranked LSU, ranked Ole Miss, and the way that they finished, if I would have told you a year ago today that Florida would finish 8-4, 8-5, hell, they could borderline be a 9-win team, you would have said Billy Napier up for Coach of the Year. Why does that change now? Right? Like, why does that change of how good they were post LSU? They dominated human beings. So you're right, but you got to come to the swamp, and I mean, you got to come to LSU. We were in the swamp last year. The LSU people don't like Florida, and that's just the truth. They don't like the jorts. They don't like the naive thing that they can come in here. They're going to get a little revenge on that one. That series goes back and forth. It's just how it goes. But you're right. Both of those teams are going to test your biggest weaknesses early, and you better figure some things out quickly. I'm really high on Florida offensively. I don't think Ron Roberts can bust a grape. I think that's going to be a disaster. But regardless, they're a tough out for anybody that they play. I don't care what anybody tells me.
The Ole Miss game is also in September. I thought there was a bye and then Ole Miss, but the Ole Miss game
got to go on the road.
Yeah, and that one is interesting too because you talked about in talking about the portal a little bit. Ole Miss built so much through there, and I know LSU #1 portal class, like they have certainly gone heavy there, but they've recruited so well too. But it does really feel like the two teams that have leaned really heavy on the portal this cycle, and for a few cycles, like it's not just this year. That matchup feels so huge. Ole Miss has massive games later in the year. They've got to play Georgia. They got to go to Athens. They've got some really big ones. LSU, big games later in the year with A&M, South Carolina, Bama, games that are going to be tough. And it feels like the loser of that LSU Ole Miss game really, especially if, God forbid for the LSU fans watching, but especially if LSU has picked up a loss already in September, the Ole Miss game becomes a must-win, right? You go lose a 3-point game to Clemson, you beat Florida. That Ole Miss game, it's not a must-win because if you win out, you're fine. But that Ole Miss game feels like, for both teams, it has to be a must-win, and it's on the road.
Yeah, you got to go 2-1.
Yeah.
I mean, look, in today's game, Ohio State the thing. TJ, what did all four teams besides Notre Dame, who didn't – I mean, they play one of the worst strengths of schedules in the country, so I'm not going to throw them in there. Texas had 2 losses. Penn State had 2 losses. Ohio State had 2 losses. Georgia had 2 losses. Like, I mean, I think that you can't panic early. With the parity that's happening right now, you cannot panic. But, man, you got to go 2-1. And quite frankly, you got to be you can afford to lose to – I don't think you can afford to lose to Florida at home. So one of these two, like you can lose week 1 and then go into Ole Miss and win it at home at Florida. But man, you just got to go 2-1 there. I think long are the days. And by the way, you got South Carolina coming in.
Yeah.
Right after that. I mean, look, you're going to find out. And I don't look, man. LSU struggles tackling big human beings. Well, Lenore Sellers, minus the glasses, is a different human being. I mean, he is. I mean, he's a mammoth. They went and upgraded their offensive line. I don't know what they do at running back, but look at the receivers and how they progress. Look how he looked as a passer. This schedule is not easy. And listen, so when we get down to the end of the season and you say, well, LSU's 9-3, or any team in the SEC, well, who did they play? Like, okay, Florida and DJ Lagway, they lost. Okay. They lost. They beat Clemson, but they lost to Ole Miss or Alabama. Those are the questions that we have to start asking now. We have to kind of change our mindset. I don't know if we see an undefeated team anymore. I really don't, because of the parity, but it's a brutal stretch. If you get through if you get through September, October and November, man, I mean, you got A&M at home, and let me tell you something. LSU ain't losing to A&M at home. Mark it down, it ain't happening. So, was it Karen and Kilago or whatever her name is? We're not losing to A&M at home. It just doesn't happen. So then you have Bama on the road, and then your schedule kind of gets a little bit easier here now.
Yeah.
So
After a really tough September, and I do think October, though you get the buys on both sides and you have that 3-game stretch, South Carolina, Vandy, A&M, if I'd have told you that stretch 3 years ago, you'd be like, great. That sounds wonderful. I do think those three are tougher than you expect, but they're not manageable. Like, I expect LSU to go 3-0 there. You're not lucky, but you're lucky that you get South Carolina A&M at home, Vandy on the road. You'd rather go there than have to go to South Carolina or A&M for sure. And then, like you said, on the road at Bama, yes, always tough. No matter what issues they have, always tough to go into Tuscaloosa and win. But then Arkansas, Western Kentucky, and then Oklahoma. Who knows if Venables will have a job at that point? It's after that first month, it's very, very manageable. You get through that first month at 2-1, or 2-1 in those first 3 games, but 4-1 overall, or even better if you're 5-0. The rest of the schedule lines up really, really well for them.
I know this is going to sound hyperbolic in coach speak, but stay with me. LSU's just got to worry about going 1-0 every week. Right? Like, I mean, we look at this team, okay, from an LSU fan perspective and say, well, if we do this, and this, we can make a playoff. You got to come out the gate winning game 1.
Yeah.
You get that monkey off of your back. You got these big games at home. That's early in September. There's no snow on the ground anymore, as people keep saying around here. Okay. You really got, it's an advantage. Okay. Because then let's call it what it is. Okay. I think you have a roster that's looking at this like, okay, now we can make a push. And quite frankly, TJ, people look at like the Patrick Payton and Jack Pyburn moves. I don't think people understand how bad LSU's been on the D-line. Like, oh, well, Pat Payton, he takes plays off. We've had people taking years off. Okay,
a player or two is no big deal, huh?
a player or two is an upgrade, my guy. And then you look at like Jack Pyburn. Look, TJ, I don't say this because I'm trying to get AYS like views and clicks. I mean this. There has never been a bigger spring at LSU. Ever. There's so many questions, but I mean, Mansour Delane and Pat Payton are all ACC guys. LSU has not had that, man. I mean, regardless of the conference, they have not. And then you bring in DJ Pickett, the 5-star. Dude, there's no more excuse. Really, there's no more excuse of you saying, well, the talent wasn't there. Last year, I'm with you. You didn't have it. But you managed. You went from 108 in total defense to 56. I mean, with the same personnel.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's a massive difference. So I think that defensively, it's going to be interesting because then Garrett doesn't have to put everything on his shoulders. You know what, man? It's a bad play. I'm going to throw it away. I'm not going to turn the ball over because defensively, I know that we can make a stop. That's a big deal on his on the turnovers that he created because he felt like he had to be Jaden in this aspect. If I don't score here, we're going to lose.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, if he didn't score, he was right. They lost. So think about this too. The thing that I would throw this out there too. Garrett Nussmeier's interceptions, 10 of the 12 came in the second half. 10 of the 12. You didn't have the depth. You didn't make the stops defensively, and teams out-schemed you, and you could not figure things out. That all in and of itself has got to change. But I think that winning that first game has got to be paramount. It's got to be the ultimate thing. You just got to go 1-0. You have a lot of games home in September before you go on the road. Then you can make your adjustments there. You just got to win game one. I'm not going to pick them to win it. You got to go out there and show me, man, this guy was the last dude to do it. And that I feel like if LSU can just get that monkey off their back, it will change so many things for them.
Yeah, you just play looser. You lose to Clemson, and when Florida comes in, who will be 2-0 at that point because they don't play anybody. Yeah, you just press. You just press more, right? And so, yeah, I mean, you're right. You know, or if you beat Clemson, you lose to Florida, you go on the road, you press against Ole Miss. Like, it's just what it is. Whereas if they can play loose, like they go up to Ole Miss undefeated, how loose are they playing? You know, because the game is house money, right? Like, you've done what you needed to do. You play looser. And so, but again, you lose at Clemson. And it's going to be tough. That's not going to be an easy game. You lose at Clemson, and it just immediately – now, you go win those 2 SEC games early in the year in September, and some of the pressure probably subsides a little bit, right? You get the bye week to start October. You have 3 manageable games. You're at home that first week. I get it. But, yeah, the pressure ratchets up if you lose that Clemson game. It just makes everybody's a little bit tighter.
No doubt. I mean, and then you're like, well, because now you can't make the excuse that it's personnel because you went and got all those dudes.
Yeah.
What excuse you going to make now? You can't make any excuse. So, again, the biggest spring in LSU football's recent history starts a month from today.
Blake, you do a great job with AYS. I'm sure LSU fans are familiar with that. So you talk about that a little bit. But just tell me a little bit about the Ruffino and Joe show.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're kind of mad at me because they say I'm too negative on AYS, so I guess Rafino and Joe is a little bit of an escape. But Rafino and Joe show, we're live at 6 mainly. I mean, we changed some things up because we got T-ball starting and things, so stay on the lookout. But Sundays, Mondays, and Wednesdays is when we're live. You can catch it there. We're going through the Big Ten. TJ, I think that Michigan is really interesting. I think that they're a lot like Florida in a lot of aspects, very physical football team. So we'll continue on this series of going through the conferences. I think we'll finish the Big Ten in the next couple of days. We'll go to the ACC. I think the ACC is wide open. So you can catch us there on Rafino and Joe show. And then AYS, man, baseball starts. We're here, baby. We're all baseball mode now, babe.
Dude, I'm so when my daughter was 4, about to turn 5, so she was almost a 5-year-old. I took her to the Women's College World Series, and Florida State made the final. They lost to Oklahoma because that's what everyone does. But I took her to the Women's College World Series. We had a phenomenal time. My son is 4, my middle kid is about to turn 5, and I'm looking at baseball. Like, I'm just like, please go back to the World Series because I will take him if we make it. No matter if we're the 8 seed one, it doesn't matter. Florida State obviously will have a good program. I don't know if they'll be in the Final Four or not. Again, it's so hard to you see who you get matched up with in supers.
Talk about a turnaround.
Yeah,
State, man.
Link's been fun, but I really want to take my son. If he, that's kind of going to be my thing. Is when they're about to turn 5, I'm going to take him on a 1-on-1 trip. If we don't make the College World Series, I'll probably take him to Chicago to see a couple of games. At Wrigley, that'll be fun. But I'd much rather go to Omaha and have some good steak. So I'm all with you on the baseball. On Rufino and Joe, and I don't say that I give you a hard time at times, and we joke and I'll troll you and stuff here and there. But I'll tell you this. I watch a few. I watch Crane. I watch most of Pate. I watch a few national shows, but I'm really busy. I don't get time to watch much. I catch at least part of every Rafino and Joe, and I really do think you guys do such a good job. It really it does feel like this is what every podcast wants. They want it to sound like two guys sitting at the bar, like having drinks and just talking sports. But I will say, like, it almost reminds me of, and don't get mad at me when I first say this, it reminds me of like First Take, when First Take was like just starting out and not everything was like this massive hot take like it is now. Like a mix of like First Take and, what PTI, or pardon the interruption, like just where two guys are just talking sports and just it is so good. And I'm not saying that to butter your butt, because I don't say that to everybody that comes on here.
I appreciate
I
that.
really enjoy it. I like the banter. I like you and Joe going back and forth, because again, it's not like First Take, was at the very end where it's just everything's a massive hot take of, why Pat Mahomes sucks or whatever. I'm just like, shut the hell up. But
Right.
it feels like the really early days of like sports television where it was good, and there was some drama into it, there was some arguing, and that's great. I like that. It doesn't have to be what it is. So anyway, Rafino and Joe, I can't recommend it enough. Every time I see you guys grow more, every time I see you guys do anything, I love it, because I don't want to be the only one listening. I'm glad you guys don't have 6 subscribers, because I'd be one of the 6. So yeah, no, you guys do a great job, and I'll always give you a hard time, but the show is really, really good.
Thanks, man. It means a lot coming from you. And look, man, I feel it's interesting because we are kind of both on this journey together, right? Like me and you talked. Think about this: 4 years ago, me and you were kind of just really starting off in this, and then now, we're sitting here and able to collab. And look, you guys do a fantastic job too, man. I mean, look, it's so great when you can just sit down and have conversations about sports, and we yell at each other, but that's the big thing. And then it's interesting you bring that up because of the LSU Notre Dame Brian Kelly rivalry.
Oh, it makes it fun.
It makes it that much fun. Like we're arguing at everybody. I didn't talk to Notre Dame for 2 months, right? Like I knew more about Notre Dame at times than LSU at some aspects. So it makes it that much fun. But look, yeah, on Rafino and Joe show, we try to be unapologetically ourselves, right? Like I'm like literally I will debate anybody if I have a conviction. And I think Joe's the same exact way. And you're right. We try to make it, when we first started, we were like, let's kind of first take it and let's not try to argue on every single thing. But when we agree, it's not the team that, if we're agreeing on a team and then you play that team, whether good, bad, or indifferent, we don't barely miss, and that's the thing that I'm like, when we agreed about LSU and them doing bad, that's when I start getting nervous. Like I'm like, oh, my stomach's starting to hurt. So it's really fun, man. I love college football. I'll talk it all year, and I do. And that, the good Lord's given me the advantage to do this. And it's just like, man, you really let me come out here and yell and talk about college football. There's no better job in the world to be able to come out here and do this. And now you let me do it for baseball for the next 4 months, and I'm so excited to be able to do it.
Let's get an LSU FSU home and home scheduled soon. Can you talk to your people? I actually will talk to a couple of people, but yeah, I want that.
Yeah, I mean, look, LSU, for what it's worth, I do think here's a hot take, not a hot take. Here's some sourcing that may happen in the next 3 years. It's not going to happen now. I've been told that ESPN is going to be doing some things with college baseball, like Saturday mornings, recapping and stuff like that. So I think you could put a couple of things together. But in the beginning of the season, there's no more going to Texas for these Shriner Classic things. I think you'll see these massive Florida State coming to LSU for a weekend series, or LSU going to Tallahassee for a weekend.
It'd be oh my gosh, could you even imagine? Like, I can't.
No, I can't.
We don't have it. We get it at the end of the year, Supers and stuff. But
ESPN's going to be pushing that, and from a financial standpoint, it's a big deal. But I don't think people realize this. When they go and host these things, they pay for ESPN pays both teams to do this now. Mm-hmm. So could you imagine, like literally imagine Florida State going to Texas for a weekend series, or Florida State going like that money's coming to college baseball. Dude, in 5 years, it's going to take over college basketball. You watch what I'm telling you now. You watch what I'm telling you. People think I'm crazy. It's going to do it.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I love it, and so I like tuning into your AOIS rants after big wins or big losses. It's because I know you get just as hot about baseball as everything else.
Oh man, and you know what's so crazy? I have to completely change my tune from how I react to football stuff. And it's a preseason for me too. You lose a midweek game. You can't lose to Rudy Poo Tech.
Nothing.
And I'm like, dude, last year LSU was 3-12 in the SEC. Okay, conference record. And I'm like, look, there comes a point, Texas A&M, number 1 team in the country, you got to win it. But you still technically have a shot if you don't, right?
Yeah.
You still mathematically have a shot, and then they win it. And I'm like, this is the difference in baseball. You can't. TJ, I tell my son this because he's addicted to baseball right now. I literally tell him, buddy, you got to get 3 hits out of 10. He goes, what? I'm like, if you do that the rest of your life, first off, daddy's getting a beach house. Okay. But then secondly, you'll be the best baseball player of all time.
Yeah.
Right. Literally. So I think that is in and of itself, man, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah. Blake, I appreciate you a ton for hanging out. I know we went over time, but I appreciate you for chatting this morning, and we'll be tuning in.
You call me in the off season of college football. I couldn't.
Yeah. It's easy right now. There's nothing to talk about.
Right.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, see you, man.